MechWarrior 5 Clans is out, and it's fantastic to play. I've been enjoying my time with it. I've been taking it slow and really immersing myself in it. And you can see that if you check out my stream. So I do stream MechWarrior 5, and I bring this up not just to be a self-plugging um, freeloader on myself as it might be viewed, but also because the footage you're seeing has my ugly mug in the bottom corner of the screen blocking the equipment list of what the mech has on it. This is because the only footage I currently have is of me streaming this game, as my first playthrough is going to be done entirely on stream over multi-parts. So if you're wondering what's going on here, that's why you're seeing that. But since I'm here talking to you about the stream, there's a link in the video description. You should definitely go check it out and leave a follow there. Leave a subscribe hit over here. Both are free to do. And that way you can be part of future conversations here and be notified when I am live on stream. So you can come hang out and we can talk mechs, we can talk power armor, we can talk whatever it is, because I don't just stream MechWarrior 5 clans. I also stream Space Marine 2, Destiny 2, and I'll be streaming other video games out there as well, you know, relevant to the topics at hand, or not at all, and we could just discuss whatever and have fun. So keep that in mind, check it out, leave a follow, leave a subscribe hit over here as well. With that shameless self-promotion out of the way, again, that's why the footage is like it is. My internet service provider is the real final boss, so there might be some drop frames in this footage because for some reason it is... my internet should be more than sufficient, but they are being rather meek recently. In any case, all that being out of the way, with MechWarrior 5 clans here, and with the want to go over the mechs that we have access to use in the game, I want to first do a primer on Battlemechs in general for Battletech, which is the setting that MechWarrior takes place in. I'm James, welcome to Mechanical Mayhem. Let's do this primer on the basics of Battlemechs. So when I say basics, we're going to go over what powers them, we're going to go over how a standard Battlemech is designed, how that differs from the Omni-Mech design pioneered by the clans, and then we'll discuss the concept of weight real briefly and look at the weight classes briefly, standard weight classes of Battlemechs. To get a feel for everything and more or less have this primer to understand as we start to delve deeper into the mechs in MechWarrior 5 clans and beyond. So, should be a lot of fun. Now, with that said, there are other mechs than Battlemechs in the setting. That's what's pretty cool. There are industrial mechs, which are basically any type of civilian style of mech that is nowhere near military grade, more or less. There are proto-mechs, which is a whole different design that I'm not even going to get into here, but we'll have videos on that in the future. And we have the Battlemechs. So, we're just looking at Battlemech design. Now, pretty much every Battlemech that I'm aware of, and I think pretty much every Battlemech out there, shares the same type of power plant, although they have different size and power output. Bigger mechs are going to want more power output. Lighter mechs, which are smaller, are going to A, have the room for some of the bigger power plants, and B, don't really need it given their size. But with that said, Battletech makes use of a classic sci-fi MacGuffin. And when I say MacGuffin, I mean something that's used just to easily explain away the amount of power output required or how something can function. Fantasy has its own MacGuffins as well. One of them is magic, right? How is that golem working? It's magic. Oh, okay, great, right? Stuff like that. Well, in sci-fi, one of the MacGuffins we have is fusion power, and these mechs run on fusion engines. So they have a fusion core that powers them. Nothing wrong with using MacGuffin. It makes sense. It works. And Battletech actually goes into decent depth in the lore of the setting in regards to these fusion engines, which we will do in a future video and pretend like we know what we're talking about when it comes to fusion. So with that said, Battlemechs, pretty much all are powered, to my knowledge, by some form of fusion engine. This isn't fission. There is a very big difference. And as such, I dare say a safer power plant to use here. And produces plenty of power for their needs. Same kind of concept. You don't need to refuel every day or anything like that. This is going to provide sustainable power for a long time for these mechs, which is always good, and a high power output. The trade-off being heat and the ability to melt down if things get critical and all that, but I went over that very briefly in the heat management video because, you know, everybody wants to talk about heat management. But in any case, that's how these mechs are powered. Innisphere or clan, light to assault, doesn't matter. As far as how these mechs are built, they're built like an animal. aka a person, or if it's a quadrupedal mech, like an animal. What do I mean by this? Well, they have an endoskeleton. We have an endoskeleton. They have things basically supported to their endoskeleton, just like we would do. Now, the difference, of course, is their skin is armor, but it's just skin. It's not anything really foundational, meaning all the equipment, be it war gear, sensors, life support, power plant, whatever else they have, the actuators, they're all basically grafted to this frame, this endoskeletal frame. And I say that because if you lost all your skin, it'd be really gross, probably really painful, and things would start kind of moving around. Gross, right? Well, with mechs, you could take off their armor and their components pretty much stay in place. Any type of cabling and stuff might go slacking, but typically that's routed so it doesn't rub up against things anyway. But the point in this is that the armor of the mech isn't structural like it might appear. It can support weight. It's definitely going to add some rigidity, right? Because if you start plating things, it's going to make it more rigid, but it's not a core foundational structural element like the endoskeleton frame is. So it has an endoskeleton, and that's where everything's bolted to. That's what the cockpit's a part of and everything else. As a random side note, anything cockpit-wise for a standard battle mech is referred to as the head. I say that because not every battle mech has a clear quote-unquote head, but whatever the cockpit is just kind of in layman's terms referred to as the head of the mech. If it has an actual head, that's where the cockpit is. At least 9.9 times out of 10 that I'm aware of. So, with that said, not for proto-mechs, but that's a whole different thing. So that's how a standard mech is built. Standard battle mech. They have everything literally grafted to the skeleton. This includes the war gear. This includes sensors, heat sink. Everything is very much in place. Hard point in place. This means if you wanted to convert the mech or refit the mech, you would need a facility to basically rebuild it. Because you would have to deconstruct it, cut things off, weld new things in place, reinforce it, and literally kind of build it new. This happens. We see notable design variants that are custom for either a high-ranking official or a Solaris 7 jockey when it comes to standard mechs. And we even see official variants of mechs. However, when it comes to official variants, they come from the factory that way. It's kind of like if you order a car and you're going to order the performance version, somebody else is going to order the full luxury version that's with economy. They go down the factory assembly line and they get built differently. That's how it works for the different official variants of the same Battlemech chassis. Which is why they don't tend to, A, have a lot of variants per chassis, and B, when it comes to chassis, there's a lot of different chassis design. The weight classes have variety of weight within each class, which is going to help with that. But also, you're going to need a whole new mech design if you want to do some radical concept for that mech, because the other mech you're currently building just won't be able to support that. That's standard battle mech design. Now, enter the world of the clans, who introduced the Omni-Mech concept. Clan Omni-Mechs are and were a revolution in mech design. The industry would eventually adopt their own, but not until after contact with the clans. The clans have second-line mechs, as they call them, that are standard battle mechs, but their front-line, first-class mechs are all Omni-Mechs, and these things are modular mechs. Their chassis is more or less the same. It still has an endoskeleton. It still has, the actuators and the power plants and everything all connected to the endoskeleton. But when it comes to the equipment beyond just life support and whatever else, that's all in omnipods, it's referred to. These pods fill up pod space on the mech. The mech has X amount of pod space available, and this allows for multiple configurations of the mech to be designed for. So you have the primary, typically referred to as the prime configuration, then you have alternates A, B, C, and so on. All of these are the same chassis, but depending upon which configuration you have, different pods are installed into these pod spaces, which can make the mech look radically different from its primary configuration, but also allows the mech to have different capabilities. Now, this does mean the mech can be kind of a jack of all trades, but not the same capacity because each individual configuration can be more specialized. What this results in is less variety of chassis, as though you still have variety of chassis, but you don't need quite as many because that light mech can do 3 or 4 different battlefield roles, and therefore you only need, let's say, a handful of light mech chassis versus a dozen or something because of that. You still have variety. This is a miniature-based game originally, after all, so you gotta sell those awesome miniatures so you can have variety, but lore-wise, it's not going to be as much variety as you see for standard Battlemech design. This has a lot of advantages. A, without the sheer variety, it's very easy to keep the infrastructure and supply lines capable for everybody, because you're not going to have a dozen different light mech designs with half a dozen being fielded in your theater, and you have to, okay, we need to support this, X, Y, Z, ABC. You can just support a very small number of chassis designs. The other thing is, being modular, let's say you're in the primary configuration, you take critical damage and one of your pods are destroyed, and you don't have another primary pod to put in its place. You can strip the mech down of its pods, do the necessary repairs for damage and whatever else, and install alternate configuration A or whatever pods you have on hand. The mech is out on the field in a much faster time frame than something that has to have its stuff like kind of cut out and put back in. So it leads to these mechs having a high uptime in the field, making them a relentless foe to face. So, with all that said and out of the way, that's the difference between Omni-Mechs and Battlemechs. Omni-Mechs still have a very similar structural design, but instead of everything being grafted onto the frame and kind of hardwired, we have this pod space to make it modular. As a result, they're not even referred to sometimes in the lore as Battlemechs, but they're specifically referred to as just Omni-Mechs. However, they are mechs that do battle, so yes, they are Battlemechs, and just for, casual talking with fans and everything else, players and whatnot, they just call them mechs. It's whatever. On the outside, they will look no different to a standard battle mech. In any case, that is the basics of battle mech construction and omni-mech construction. Very basic. There's a lot more to go into, but we're not going to do that here. This brings us to the concept of weight. As I mentioned, the mechs have different weight classes, and we're looking at the standard light to assault. We're not looking at the colossal super heavy stuff here. That's much later in the timeline and not really quite as established or taken off as it is for the standard weight classes that the mechs had since like the 80s. Anyways, they're differentiated by weight, and of course with weight comes size and capability and limitations. The way this is done is through tonnage. Now, if I ever discuss something specs here on the channel, what I'm going to do is discuss it in its native form, being the first way I talk about it, with a conversion to the other unit of measurement, because there's, a couple of different units of measurements out there. And then after that, I'll just only refer to it in its native measurement, but in the video description will be the spec sheet with the native measurement and the conversion right there for a quick and easy reference. I say that because while Battletech utilizes that archaic metric system for speed and distance, when it comes to tonnage, we're just given a blank reference as tons, X amount of tons, and that's it. And while you could say that's got to be a metric ton, everything else is in metric, even non-tonnage weight is in metric, it also doesn't have to be. And I don't want to make that assumption. I haven't seen anything in the lore of the setting to specifically point to that. If I'm just being super blind and it's really obvious in somewhere, definitely post the comments or in the comments what says it so I can go check it out myself, put my own eyes on it, get first-hand experience, and then I'll do the conversions, no problem. But right now I'm going to leave it blank. It could either be a short ton or a long ton, up to you. That's a standard or a metric ton. There is a weight discrepancy. That's why the 2 tons types exist. There is a weight discrepancy with metric being heavier, but at this point, A, it's heavy regardless. B, if you're just looking at tons in your own kind of natural way to look at that, whether it's standard or metric, who cares, right? You get a sense for it. It doesn't really change anything outside of, one way of looking at it is heavier than the other. But whatever. At the end of the day, it's still heavy, and we still get the idea. So I think that might be why it was deliberately left vague, or they just assumed we would make the assumption. Whatever the case is, let's start talking weight classes. So when it comes to weight classes, the lightest mech class recognized as a military battle mech is the light mech. There have been some ultralights out there, with one of the light mech's variants known as the Flea, instead of being 20 tons, actually being 15 tons for whatever reason. But when it comes to the ultralight concept of being less than 20 tons, most factions don't really even officially acknowledge that as a battle mech because it's so meek and light and frail. So the lightest battle mech officially recognized by pretty much everybody is 20 tons. Now, it's important to note that the light mech category goes from 20 tons to 35 tons, but the light mech category and every category of standard battle mech as well goes up in 5-ton increments. This works for light, medium, heavy, assault, and so on. So that means that while we go from 20 to 35 tons for the light mech, it's 20, 25, 30, 35. It's not 27, it's not 31 or anything like that. So I appreciate that. It just makes it cleaner to follow. These mechs are going to be your outriders, your scanners, your surveyors, your scouts, your harassers. These are also going to be what a lot of really kind of backwater, low budget kind of facilities are going to have protecting them. Benefit of light is that they're pretty cheap, so you could amass a lot of them and kind of do swarm tactics, although they can be taken out pretty quickly by the heavier classes, depending upon the weaponry they have, so do so at your own risk. They tend to have the most amount of jump jets, in my opinion. I think there's the most variants of light mechs have jump jets as opposed to other weight classes. They also tend to have things like active probes and Guardian ECM equipment for electronic warfare and countermeasures. So they make really good outriders and scouts for a mixed weight support group. However, they are pretty frail, with some light mechs packing some decent punch out of nowhere that will make you go, hey, what just happened? But for the most part, they tend to be glass cannons in that capacity and just really aren't designed to go toe-to-toe in a slugfest. They're designed to be fast, mobile, hard to hit, get out of there, and support. Makes sense, as you'd expect. The next weight class is the medium mech class. This goes from 40 tons to 55 tons, and these are actually your workhorse style of mechs. Chances are there's more medium mechs in service doing things than there are other weight classes. And all but the biggest of engagements, you're going to have medium mechs kind of dominating the landscape in terms of that's what you're going to see the most of. They tend to lead light mech configurations. The leader tends to be in a medium mech or in the heaviest light mech. They tend to make up whole groups going in and supporting some heavier formations. So you might have an anchor point of one battle group that's heavy, but then everything else is mediums and some lights supporting it. It's just the way it works. In the lore, anyways, that's how it's been described. They pack decent punch, decent speed and maneuverability, and some decent defense, depending upon which chassis you're looking at, of course, and what weight within the medium class, and definitely are not to be taken lightly. They can reach up and, bloody your nose very quickly if you're not careful. They can pack weaponry that some assault mechs will even go, okay, keep your distance or close in so they're not as effective type of deal. Although closing in is kind of hard, and keeping your distance can be kind of hard when the mech is definitely going to be faster than you, because medium mechs have some speed. But my point is that no weight class is safe from any other weight class, and the medium mech weight class is where heavier weight classes start taking notice of, okay, certain designs we got to definitely prioritize taking down. But this brings us to the heavyweights. Starting off at 60 tons, capping off at 75 tons. These are your bruisers, your brawlers. These are going to be your kind of workhorse main battle line mechs. Where there's heavy fighting, there's definitely going to be heavy mechs. These pack enough armor and different war gear equipment to take down even assault mechs and make assault mechs take pause and take notice. They also are able to easily take down light mechs when they connect with them, and even medium mechs, making them a force to be reckoned with. Basically, things are getting serious when you see multiple heavy mechs on the field. This is where we start to see speed potentially radically diminish a little bit. I know it's a weird way to say, a weird collection of words there, but they're not walking glorified turrets like some assault mechs are. These heavy mechs can still bring some decent speed potential and have pretty good maneuverability to boot. But of course, they're not going to have the same speed potential maneuverability as the lighter classes. But just because they're heavyweights doesn't mean they're necessarily slow on their feet either. But if you want to punch a hole in the enemy fortress or break through a battle line or make the enemy's blood freeze, you field assault mechs. Assault mechs start off at 80 tons and they cap at 100 tons. These are the only, or this is the only standard mech weight category that has a 20-ton swing. The rest have 15 tons. So these things are big bruisers. They're awesome. Quite literally, one of them's called Awesome, and it's accurate. So they pack as much armor as the weight of some whole light battle mechs. So some assault mechs pack 20 tons worth of armor, which is the entire weight of a light mech. That's how crazy it is. They pack weapons in a single salvo that can decimate a light mech and even a medium mech potentially in one fell swoop. Everybody sits up and takes notice whenever an assault mech is on the field, and that either means everybody's going to try and just focus fire on it or outmaneuver it, which the assault mech's allies can take advantage of in either capacity. In essence, if you don't have an assault mech of your own on the field and you see an assault mech or multiple assault mechs, it's about to be a bad time. So that is the assault mech category. With that said, that's the basic categories, light to assault. That's the basics of their construction and their power plants. These things are large, in charge, several stories tall, packing enough firepower to absolutely level whole battle tank squadrons with ease. Sometimes they're just going to step on some of the lighter vehicles, and that's enough to take them out, right? Like they really have no cares. They pay attention because anything can take down anything in this setting. It's not like they are immune to tank fire or aircraft fire, but it's definitely a lot harder to take down a mech than it is to take down a vehicle. And they're pretty cool. So this has been a bit of a long one, but kind of a lot to go over as a primer. We now have the basic understanding together as a, foundational platform to stand on and talk to each other of Battlemech versus OmniMech, power plants, and the standard weight categories. By all means, give me your thoughts in the comment section. Share your favorite mech or weight class, whatever the case might be, in the comment section. If you made it this far into the video, definitely consider subscribing because, hey, you made it. Chances are you enjoy this type of conversation. Like I said, you can check out the streaming channel in the video description down below. Leave a follow there. Both doing that and subscribing are free. So, subscribing here, I should say, and doing that follow on the stream is free, and it'll let you be part of conversations more easily and be part of the fun more easily. If you made it to the very end and you're hearing this, definitely comment the word. Let's see here. We don't want to do this kind of different. Fiber. Because there's ferrofibrous armor in this game. So comment the word fiber so I know you made it to the very end of this video, alongside anything else you want to comment. And until the next one, take care.